Alright, so let's say you've drawn up the chassis of your training program. You decided how long you're going to do something for, how you're going to set it up, your training split, and you've also probably got an idea of which exercises you think would suit you best. Now, the question might be in your mind of, is there a way to sequence these to get the most out of them? And the answer is absolutely. So what I've done is I've written down the 6 major categories that I believe encompass all of the major considerations that are worthwhile taking into account. So, when trying to select the sequence of your exercises within a particular training session, the first consideration would be the fatigue cost of said movements. So, say for example, RDLs, hack squats, leg presses, bench press, bent over rows, these are what you would consider more high fatigue cost movements. Now on the other hand, you've got things like bicep curls and calf raises and hamstring curls that are a bit more lower fatigue cost. You're seated in machines, you're strapped in, there's maybe only one muscle group primarily working at once, so therefore they're a little bit less than fatigue. They also require a little bit less get up and go from a psychological perspective. So, let's say you're going to do 6 exercises, 3 of them are high fatigue cost movements in your mind, and 3 of them are not so bad. Then, especially if you're a beginner, who you haven't yet developed the training intensity and work ethic to train as hard as possible regardless of how tired you are, you're going to want to do the hard stuff first when you have the most energy. Now, on the other hand, if you are somebody who's trained for a long time, then this would be less of a consideration because, as I said, over the years, you've really built up the dedication, self-awareness of your body, and the work ethic and the intensity to train as hard as you need to, regardless of whether it's start of the session or the end. So, especially in the beginning of your training journey, the fatigue cost should probably arguably be the first most primary consideration when sequencing your exercises. If you're going to do a leg session and it's leg extensions, hamstring curls, calves and squats, then just do the squats first. Easy as that. Now, next would be priority. Moving around your exercises within your session relative to what your priority is a really good idea. So take this for example. If shoulders are a priority for you and chest is not, and triceps are not, then doing shoulders first before chest, even though that might not be the most common way that you see people perform their push sessions, that can be a really great idea. So doing the stuff that's a priority for you first is ultimately probably the second biggest consideration. Now, you don't need to do the exercises or the muscle group that's the top priority at the start of your sessions. An example of this would be if you take somebody who has got good shoulders, but specifically wants to work on their side delts, but their chest is still their primary objective or primary priority, side delts are second, shoulders, front delts are third, then you might sequence a session with a chest exercise, and then a side delt exercise, and then a normal delt exercise, and then say, for example, some arms at the end. So thinking about what your priority is, and just making sure that the sequence makes sense relative to that. Now, number 3 would be joint comfort. Now, what I mean by this is, if you're doing an exercise where it just doesn't feel the best on your joints, let's say, for example, you do an incline dumbbell press, and just for some reason, it's just been niggling at your shoulders, nothing too bad, nothing to limit your ability to do the exercise, but it's not very comfortable and you don't particularly enjoy it. Now, let's say you're also in a situation where you just don't have that many incline pec exercises available at your gym. So you can make the argument for you kind of just need to do something at least very similar. So let's say these incline exercises, they're your only options and they don't feel the best on your shoulders for whatever reason. Then what you could do is you can do an exercise before that main press, say cable flies, and that can pump a lot of blood in your front delts, your pecs, and also fatigue those muscles, your main pressing muscles. So essentially then if you sequence your incline dumbbell press second to that, you're already fatigued, which means you're lifting a bit less with the dumbbell press, but you're getting more out of it because you're already tired and stimulated, and the reduction in weight for the incline press really goes a long way to saving your shoulders. That can be a great shout as well. So thinking about joint comfort, this is probably not the top priority. I would definitely be thinking about the other ones first, but it can be another good way of sequencing the session. Another example of this is if you're doing a shoulder press. Say for example, a shoulder press, and again, it doesn't feel great in your shoulders. You feel like the back of your shoulders could do with being pumped full of blood to make you feel a bit more stable. Maybe just doing some rear delt flies first, and then doing your shoulder press could be a good idea too. So there's loads of different examples, but joint comfort is something that you may or may not want to be aware of. Number 3 is, are you natural? So very simple. When you're not natural and you're enhanced, your injury risk will typically be a little bit higher because the weights you're lifting are really, really big. And especially if you're stupid with your training. So one thing that is very much not stupid in your training is thinking about how you can sequence your exercises to reduce your risk of injury. So let's say, for example, you're rapidly increasing the weight on your squats to the point where you're concerned that your tendons and your connective tissue might not keep up with the rate in which your muscles are getting stronger, because taking steroids makes your muscles get very big very quickly, and your connective tissue, your tendons and ligaments, don't keep up at the same pace. So the strength in which you're gaining in your musculature is way faster than the strength and resilience you're gaining in your connective tissue, and that's why you'll see people often snap tendons and tear muscles and things that we don't want to happen. I'm not saying this is going to happen, it's very, very rare and you have to be very, very stupid, but if you want to protect against these things, these various considerations, then let's say, going back to my example of the squats, squats are going super well, but you're concerned that your connective tissue might be taking a beating, then sequencing some leg extensions before your squats will pre-exhaust your quads so that it's going to reduce how much weight you lift in your squats, but you'll get just the same stimulus from your squats because your quads are so exhausted and so stimulated essentially. And this, with a reduction in weight for the squats, can be very good for the connective tissue in your knees. So natural could be another one. Number 5, lower back fatigue. Now, especially as you get stronger in training, this won't be as much of a consideration for you beginners, but if you can say, for example, RDL 1.5 times your body weight for reps, you're definitely at a stage where you're probably experiencing this. Some exercises exhaust your lower back. You can finish a set of squats and your lower back is super pumped, and then next up in your program you see you've got RDLs or deadlifts and you think, well, then the limiting factor is going to be more my back as opposed to the muscles I'm actually trying to work, whatever the example is. So thinking about how we can sequence things to reduce lower back fatigue, or essentially allow the lower back to keep up throughout the session, can be very useful as well. So let's say your lower back gets fried after you do squats, but you want to do squats first because it's your priority. Let's say it's your goals. So you want to do squats first, but it cooks your lower back at the same time. So first exercise, you might do squats, and instead of doing RDLs or something like that, stiff leg deadlifts, you might just want to do hamstring curls second in order to have a seated machine that you can essentially let your lower back have a rest, and then you can move on to something else that might also fry your lower back a bit, essentially after your lower back has had a bit of a rest. So we can sequence exercises to protect lower back fatigue, and ultimately that can, in some scenarios, help promote more productivity from the session as well. So number 6 would be enjoyment. Now, this is the last one that I would consider here, but it is also a genuine consideration. You have to enjoy your training. And let's say, for example, you're going to do a leg session where there's 2 exercises on there that you really should be doing because they're priorities for you and they're relative and specific to your goals, but you just don't like them. Bulgarian split squats, walking lunges. Let's say you're a runner. Okay, but you just hate them. You know you need to do them. There's no other replacements for whatever reason. You have to do them, but you just don't like them. Then programming, Bulgarian split squats, and then walking lunges back to back might not be the best thing. So enjoyment could be another one as well. And then also exercises that you enjoy in the beginning. You wouldn't want them to take away from the fact that as you move through your session that you're going to enjoy the other stuff a little bit less, so you start trying less hard. Sort of sporadically interspersing exercises that you enjoy throughout the session to break up the ones that you don't enjoy so much can be a great tool as well. So sequencing your sessions can come down to these 6 major considerations and probably a million more, but these are the major ones. And it's a very good tool in order to get more out of your training session. That being said, by far the most important variables are the effort you apply and the progression you see, and both of those things can be compensated regardless of any of these considerations by the intent that you bring into the gym. So that's it. Hope this video helped.